Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Romi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sensi AI. And with me here is Kristen Duell, an EVP of Experience and Innovation in First Light Home Care. We are extremely excited and honored to be on this stage and speak to you about AI and innovation, but maybe from a different angle. So we promise not to bore you with things you already heard during the past 2 days and in past conferences as well. But rather what we thought it will be interesting is actually deeper dive into the challenges and opportunities of both providers and technology companies in the field and look at it from a perspective of incorporation and implementation of technology in home care. So just a few words about Sensi to those of you who don't know us until now. So what Sensi is doing is we are actually providing for the first time ever with the help of AI full visibility into the changing needs of the older adult at home. We're focusing specifically on home care, working in 41 states as of today. And essentially we're providing all kinds of insights and notifications about the needs such as early signs of diseases, UTI and pneumonia, for example, things as cognitive decline, mental issues, falls, calls for helps, and such. Kristen, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
So I've been in this industry for 20 years, focused in 18 of those 20 years on the vendor side for the most part, a lot of that on the EMR. For the past 5 years, I've been really thinking about going back to the provider side. And as of August of last year, I made the decision to join my good friend Glee at First Light Home Care as her EVP of Experience and Innovation. And it's really where I get to apply all the lessons and all the learnings that I've had from a technology perspective and bring those core competencies to the provider side and being able to implement.
Great. So before we start our chat, I want to offer the audience here maybe a different perspective and a different point of view of why you're hearing so much about AI. Why now? Not only about from the perspective of the technology advancements, but also I want to maybe connect it to our industry, to our field, and why now is the right time to implement technology here. So if you think about that, ages and ages ago, we started with tribalism care, right? Where we had our older adults under the same rooftop, and we took care of them in the same home that they grew up in. And then what happened is us, as the sandwich generation, we wanted to go to work, we wanted to raise our kids, and this is where we introduced to the world for the first time ever the concept of old age homes. Today's nursing home, assisted living facilities, and all of those types of facilities where we group a bunch of older adults together and provide them with professional care under the same rooftop. What we didn't realize back then is that we're actually secluding the older adults, taking away their independence and taking away the access to the lifestyle that they really wanted. And what we're seeing today is a major shift towards aging in place. And if you think about that, what we are being required to do as a society is to unbundle all the services that we provided to them in old age homes and provide it to them in an on-demand, personalized way in their own homes. Thinking about that, this is the same evolution that many other industries have gone through until today, from localized approach to centralized approach to highly distributed systems. And what is the connection between all of those industries that went through this evolution? It's technology. Technology came in order to allow this evolution to happen, in order to resolve all the challenges of this new era of those industries. And this is exactly what we're saying in home care right now, and why technology is starting to be more and more present in our lives today. One more thing before we start, and I promise this is the last one. I want to do a quick survey here. So, who of you have heard about ChatGPT? Perfect, this is a nice amount. Who of you are using ChatGPT? Nice, we have an innovative crowd here. Yeah. Usually I'm not getting that much hands. Then, who of you are using ChatGPT for the purposes of your business? Much less, but still a nice amount. And I can tell you for sure that in the past year, when I'm asking these questions in conferences around the country, the increase is very present. So we are seeing more and more people using ChatGPT to their business purposes. I would say from technology perspective, when we have a software engineer on board that is not using ChatGPT, for me as a CEO is a red flag. Because whatever they can do with the help of technology today to save time and to be more efficient, this is something we have to embrace as a society and as an industry. And with that, I want to hand over to you, Kristen. I want to ask you a few questions and I would love you to share with the crowd your perspective on the challenges of implementing technologies in our field.
So when I think about the biggest gaps in our industry on implementing innovation and technology, it's interesting how much perspective time gives you. Because 12 months ago, if I was sitting up here, I would have been in similar shoes to Romi's, and my perspective would have been that from the vendor side of things. And I probably would have given you a bunch of reasons why the solutions in which that I represented were going to be a solution for all of those gaps and all of those areas. But today I'm sitting in a much different seat and much different shoes, and I represent a side of the industry that I've admired for 18 of those 20 years. And for me, out of that 20-year time frame, I've really started to realize how many different hats we've all had to play for so long, and the chameleons we've had to be of experts of so many different areas of our industry, whether that's operational expertise, clinical, quality, technology to a degree. But I think the time has changed now where we really have to be experts in innovation. And I do think that that is one of the biggest gaps that we see from the provider side, is actually leaning in heavy and what that means from the provider side and taking the driver's seat in those, and what the role is that we play with vendors and the role that vendors play with us. And absolutely, it has to be a collaboration, but I think the responsibility is on the provider side. And I think in order to do that, somebody said it really beautifully yesterday, that you have to have an organization that embraces a strong culture. And that's all well and good, and we have beautiful values, and they all mean something to us. But if that culture doesn't also instill change, then you really will go nowhere from an implementation perspective with no matter what great vendors you work with. And so I think in making sure that you are able to actually have a culture of change and embrace that, not only from the top down, but ensuring from the bottom up that it's being communicated, it is absolutely core. And then I think the other piece of this, whenever you think about the other aspect, it's the people that you surround yourself with. And our industry has some of the brightest minds. It's one of the main reasons why I've stayed in this industry for so long. I've found mentors in every avenue of everywhere that I've went. But we do have to start to think differently and surround ourselves with different folks internally and hire for a skill set that is much more different than what we used to hire for. I think that if we're relying on vendors to only manage our data and not have our own data pool to be able to aggregate and understand where we're going, then we're beholden only to them. And so by hiring folks within in-house that are helping you, able to actually make these moves and changes, it will make you look at your business in a much different capacity. I think everybody's here familiar with the term business as usual. And in some capacities, business as usual is a really great thing, right? It means your operations are flowing in a very smooth manner. But I think whenever you think about the gaps in our industry and adoption of innovation, business as usual is a quick death to not being able to be relevant as the technology advances and as AI becomes more and more prevalent within our industry.
I cannot agree more with every word you say. I want to maybe try and go deeper and maybe share with the crowd one or two lessons learned that you had standing, in the side of the franchisor of implementing new technologies in the field.
Yeah, I think, so I'm going to take you back to 2006 for this lesson learned, because it's a lesson learned that's like housekeeping, and it continues to come back up in my life, time and time again. In 2006, I was working at a home care agency in Springfield, Missouri, and I had just started out there, was a caregiver in the field, and had been brought into the office because I showed tenacity, if you can imagine, and ambition. And the owner that my reporting structure reported up into wanted me to come into his office, and he was a mentor of mine, and he had really taken me under his wing. What I didn't know at the time was that he was laying the foundation for me for an opportunity that I was getting ready to be offered. But he started out this conversation with a smirk on his face. And if you know him, you'll know the smirk that I'm talking about. His name's Phil Malugin, and it was Integrity Home Care. And I would walk in and sit down, and he'd say, "Kristen, I'd really like for you to predict the future for me." And my young, very young self at that time looked at him like he was crazy. And I thought, what are you talking about, predicting the future? I may be young, but I'm not dumb, and I know we can't predict the future. But he went on to explain to me that if you quiet yourself and you listen and you pay attention to your surroundings and the things that are around you, you actually can start to really see where the hockey puck is going to move. And you can see what opportunities will be presented in front of you, and you can walk through those. But only if you're listening, and if you're listening to understand and not respond in those situations. And it went on to a really fabulous opportunity. I share that with you because if you're not listening to your network, to the people that are around you, you can be incredibly excited about a phenomenal solution like Sensi AI, or Element 5, or any one of the vendors that have been here today, because this conference is loaded with fabulous vendors. But if you are not listening to the needs of your people and your network, then you're ignoring the fact that you're not going to have adoption, and you're not going to have buy-in to the solutions and the great idea. And you can be incredibly sure of yourself, as I've been known to be, and still fail completely hard because you're not paying attention to the people and to the things that are around you. And so I dare to say that you can predict the future, but you've got to just, quiet yourself a little bit and pay attention to your surroundings. You'll never have the opportunity to iterate on a process or on an implementation if you don't slow it down and actually listen to the folks that are around you so that you can solve for the fundamental and sometimes foundational opportunities that your agency may have.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting point of view. I think that it's much bigger than, and I'm going off script a little bit, forgive me for that. But I think that this is one of the biggest challenges of a franchisor, to be in this fine line between serving the needs of their franchisees and listening to them, but then also pushing them beyond their boundaries, right?
Yep.
Do you remember any concrete feedback that you got from the field of something that you thought that will be incredible, but once rolling it out or speaking even to franchisees, you understood that maybe your perspective is a bit different than
Yeah,
that?
I think it's a very humbling experience going into a franchise network, because it's very different than a corporate setup. One of Ito, I think, said, as an attorney, you're paid just to provide advice. It's very similar as a franchise network. We are here to provide guidance and advice. We have over 200 CEOs that are running their own businesses and making their own decisions, and we provide guardrails to those. And again, I think going back to the excitement that you can have around knowing how many solutions and optimization of different experiences and technologies can provide value, I think the approach, though, can't be so excitable. So I don't think there's any one experience that I've had, but I will say I've dove really deep in the recent months since I've been there, and understanding fundamentally our approach to marketing and driving service leads to the network. But no matter if I know where the hockey puck is going, if I can't bring them along the journey and help them understand very complicated aspects of digital and all the different avenues that service leads arrive at your doorstep as referrals, then it doesn't matter that I get us to the end goal. And so you've really got to bring people along the journey with you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is, I think, a good segue to our third question on what did you see in the field in terms of technology helping with business outcomes, and then what do you foresee moving forward in terms of what are the technologies that you want to be incorporated in order to achieve better business outcomes?
I think the first thing that you have to think about whenever you think about technology and business outcomes, it goes back to change management processes, and really understanding and making sure that you have strong change management within your organization before you start to roll those out. Margaret said yesterday that you need to focus in on what's not changing. And I really marinated on that statement, because then I think about myself and just from a personal perspective and how much I've changed in 12 months, let alone over 20 years. And then if you apply that same thought process to how fast technology is evolving, the things that, while there are things that are the same, there's very few that are the same. You know, we will need to provide care. People will want that care in the home. You will need caregivers. But every other aspect of optimization and operations is going to be shifted and changed, and it already is happening. And so I think whenever you consider all of the opportunities that we have available to us to morph our operations and make changes, it's exponential. You could go any one direction. Was everybody in this room at the last session yesterday? What an amazing session that was. That's why I was texting Chris feverishly through it, because that was like water to an ADHD brain of all of the amazing opportunities we have out there, and it was at the right speed. But with all those opportunities, if we all went home right now and we said, I'm going to take that PowerPoint and I'm going to explore all of those, how would that go? Not very well, right? And so I think we have to, in order to implement these changes, in order to create a great pathway, you also have to have a very narrow focus of what is important to you, because it's easy to get consumed by all of the amazing opportunity and innovation that's available out there. And there's so many good ideas. I'll forward something to Glee and be like, isn't this exciting? But we have to go back to what is our strategic imperative as an organization, and how are we going to move the needle over the next 7 years, but then backing that into over the next 6 months, over the next 12 months. And when you look at all of these opportunities and you're able to narrow that focus, I think that's what's going to result in your unfair advantages being demonstrated across the industry. So we have a very narrow focus of what's important to us and what our goals are. We follow by 4 disciplines of execution within our organization. We identify what our wildly important goal is, and then we work backwards towards that every step of the way. And if something might be exciting, but it isn't actually going to drive towards those goals, then we burn the boats, we burn the ships, we'd step away from that, and we move towards what's actually going to drive the change that we need. I don't know if that answered every bit of the question, but
No, it totally did. But I'm wondering, as you spoke, I was wondering if you have any. It sounds like you're very systematic in the way you work and get decisions, which I really love, and it is inspiring. Do you have any way to really measure those business outcomes, and are you achieving those goals or not?
oh, that's such an important part of it, because, you know, one of the things I've learned as marketing is a pretty big core competency of mine is sometimes we feel like this is going to really hit home. This is a good idea. I know it is. This is $1 million idea. And then you do that A/B testing, and then you're like, no, that wasn't a good idea, and it didn't actually resonate. So the things that we think are really good, it matters absolutely not unless you have good data points in order to demonstrate it. So we are an extremely data-driven organization. In fact, when we bring good ideas to the table, you darn well better have a business case behind how that's going to move the needle, and have done the research. And we have also built our organization from the center with people that are able to really take our data, aggregate it, and we're applying our own machine learning to that as well to help our organization. Because again, I come from the vendor side. I love my vendors. I love the partnership and the collaboration. But if you're not doing it in-house to a certain degree, then you're not really going to be able to navigate those changes. And so we do. A part of 4 disciplines of execution is actually scoreboarding. And so it's a very public experience of how we're moving the needle and reviewing the results on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual perspective, and really hashing out where did we have our wins, where did we have our failures. I think you have to have an organization that is truly going to embrace the failures, because you're never going to learn if you aren't able to talk about it. And you have to create psychological safety within your organization in order to have that kind of level of transparency.
Yeah. And where do you get the data from? Like, what type of data are you based on when you're?
That's another really good question. So we pull it from all of our partners, and that's a requirement. I think that's a big shift too in how we do business with vendors, is rather than being beholden to what their requirements are and what their SLAs are. A big piece of this is negotiating with them what your requirements are in order for them to earn your business. And we require access to data points. We require integrations that allow us to be able to have access to our own data so that we can make those decision points for it. So it comes from all of our different vendors and all of our different platforms and areas of inputs, so that we're able to have the outputs.
Yeah, I think this is also a very smart way of thinking and a very good point. And I can say from the technology perspective that we thrive through feedback and we thrive from your request. Whenever a vendor is requesting something, for us it's like a pure gold where we can really deliver on that and make sure that our solution fits whatever the industry needs. So I
think that that's a key important part from a vendor perspective, is that you have that strong collaboration. And I imagine, because, Sensi AI, I know from my perspective, and I might be incorrect here, so this is just Kristen, but I think Sensi AI was one of the first ones that I really saw come to the table from our industry as a new vendor that is leveraging AI, and truly it's a core competency of your organization. You probably have some really good feedback and experiences that you can share with us around how your customers are adapting and the successes, and also, where they're moving and being able to implement this change. We've got a care crisis that's happening around staff. How is your guys' solution, and what are your customers actually seeing?
Yeah, so it's a good and a very wide question, though. I can speak for hours about that. We are in the field for, I would say, almost 5 years now, which is short, but then also a lot of lesson learned during this journey. And whenever we started our journey back in 2019, I think, what we used to do is we developed some kind of like a kit that includes our hardware in it. And we thought that all we need to do is sign up with an agency, send them the kits, sit in our office, and that's it. And we sat down and we waited for something to happen. And guess what? The kids remained in the office, nothing happened. And we picked up the phone a few weeks later and they totally forgot about what they bought. And then slowly but surely in the past 4 years, we did all kinds of trial and error. And with the feedback, the constant feedback of our clients, we learned what is the right approach of implementing a new provider in order for them to be successful with technology. And I think that this is one of the things that I'm constantly looking when I'm looking at new vendors in this industry, is whether they are focusing on home care specifically, because home care has very unique challenges. It's different from assisted living facilities, from nursing homes, from direct-to-consumer approach. And I think the implementation part is the most important part in order to really create success with agencies today. So today what Sensi is doing is actually hand-holding with the agency for about, I would say, 30 to 60 days in a very high-touch approach, where we're going to the market of our providers and helping them to put the first units in place. Because implementing technology to people that are not used to technology in most of their day-to-day can be intimidating in a way, and it's not natural to everyone. So we're coming to their market, we're helping them put the first units in place, and then we're also training them on how to do it by themselves later on. And this showed a huge uptick in our success and implementation in the field. I'd say I would be even more maybe edgy than that. Before that, we weren't able to put almost, I would say, several units in every agencies that we worked with. And today we are with tens, if not hundreds of units with every agency. So this is one of our biggest lessons learned, I would say.
What do you think, because change is so hard to get an organization to adopt the change. And when you start to throw out AI and you start to think about the robots and all of the things that could come, you could very quickly get overwhelmed and a little bit intimidated. What do you think the benefit is for an organization to actually take the leap and really start to explore? And then I'll follow that up also with, how do we identify what's a good partner for us? What are some of the things that you have seen and found as you guys have identified? Because I'm sure you've had some successes and some probably failures along the way.
Yeah. I think the two very important prerequisites to implementing a new technology in your agency is, first of all, it's not just a shiny toy to add to your agency. You need to have an end goal to that. If you see, as you said before, if you see that it will serve your business outcomes, this is where you need to go backwards from. What are your business outcomes and how do I get there, and whether this technology specifically can help me get there. So this is one thing. And then also I know it's hard, and it's hard when you don't have the tools for that. Not everyone are we have our own software engineers and machine learning experts, and they are collecting all the data for us. So for a technology company, it's easier to be a data-driven technology, but I think that a home care agency can do that as well. And I think it's very important to set your way of measuring success, making it tangible. So it won't be just a matter of, do I think, or do my care manager think it's worthwhile or not? Did it really impact my bottom line at the end of the day or not? This is one thing. And then the other thing is, I think a top-down approach is really needed here. Having you as leaders and the home care owners, the CEOs, to really make sure that they are driving this change. This change won't come from the field. It will come from the CEOs, the people that really wants to push it forward and see the big picture and can navigate as time goes by. So when we have an agency that we see a very involved owner that understand the huge impact that it can do for their business and driving and pushing for it, this is where we know that we have high chances of success.
I'm going to go a little bit off script, so bear with me.
Yeah.
But I think it's a topic that is something that's top of mind for all of us right now. And since you're on the vendor side of things and you're dealing with this firsthand, I thought, well, why not go ahead and dive into these waters of cybersecurity and breaches. And I think one of the things that I know we think about internally from a provider perspective before implementing new technology is the risk points of that. What have you seen, and how have you alleviated those concerns from your side of it? Because whenever you look in the news right now, if you have your Google alerts set up, every day there's another breach. And when you think about the implications of those breaches, and then also layering AI into that, you don't know what you don't know. So what would you say is some advice or key takeaways that, from a provider perspective, we should be considering and looking at for good partners to work with?
Yeah. So I think that first of all of the vendors you're working with should maintain the highest measures of security, of data security in their organizations. It will come most of the time in the form of HIPAA compliance, to make sure that they are implementing all the different measures within the HIPAA compliance scripts. And then on top of that, everything you can do in terms of legal, and we have Angelo here that spend a lot of time on that as technology coming into the field more and more, doing all you can from a legal perspective to make sure that you're not liable for those breaches.
Yep. I thought that was really good whenever we actually caught up. That's why I wanted to prompt that, because it was one of my biggest concerns whenever I'm looking at different technologies is, what are we doing in order to make sure that we're implementing safety? Because you can get really excited about these great things that are out there, but then very quickly get yourself into a liability situation. And so making sure that they're partnering with really great resources like Angelo is a key component of that. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up most of the questions that I had, and I think we still have some time available. So, Romi, would you like to take questions from the audience?
Sure, yeah.
At this point?
All right, now it's your turn, audience. Anybody? Thank you. Number one, let's give our panel a round of applause. This is when I can turn into Donahue. Anybody? What about security? That's something that we just talked about. What are just go into that a little bit further. What are the implications of a security breach on someone's operations? I mean, it's your reputation is everything. We heard that quite a bit during the conference. Can you take us through that a little bit more, Romi?
I think it's more of a provider perspective, though.
I mean, the implications from a provider perspective, we've seen providers go out of business because of this, right? As well as on the vendor side. Sometimes it forces a transaction that's not been that great for the vendor. I think we've seen that time and time again. Think we're seeing one play out right now in live time that's impacting quite a few people through an exchange of data. And I also think that there's PR pieces of this too, because you lose a component of trust within your network and within your local community whenever you're not mitigating that. So I do think that, from the provider side of things, if you're not thinking about what those processes are, which I know we actually all are, but if you're not also leveraging those as data points and advertisement points of how you're keeping your businesses secure from a local perspective, you're missing an actual opportunity to be able to market yourself, because the consumers you may not think are aware or bother with being concerned in this area, but I think you'd be mistaken. We've all known that for a long time that the silver tsunami was coming, but what we didn't know was, or we didn't realize, is how fast that it would come, and we'd have an AI surfboard to be able to ride the wave on, and then what those implications of that AI surfboard could mean from a security perspective. So I think you've got opportunities to be able to really market yourself uniquely in what your security measures are internally, but I also think that the due diligence has to come in a very strong way from a provider perspective of asking what are the security constraints from a vendor side of things as well.
Well said. Anyone? Bueller, remember that?
Is everybody still tired from last night?
Probably. Oh, Angelo.
So one question for you. Some of the technologies require the families and the consumer to adopt them. How have you seen that process, given that we're talking about the elderly kind of, taking on family rooms and using the actual technology?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting topic that also we had some learning curve in that. Like, it didn't work as smooth as we thought it will 5 years ago when we just started. And we figured out a few things. One, we understood that the way you position the technology to the older adult is everything. When we just started, again, we gave our first clients to go and test it in the field. And we heard them say to the older adult and their family members things such as, oh, we just put this listening device into your home and this is it. Like, it killed it immediately. Surveillance, yeah, and all kinds of terms that were a bit intimidating. And what we also figured out is even the term AI today is a bit intimidating to older adults, especially when it's such an intimate environment and it's their own homes. So we kind of came up with a pitch that explained the value of the system rather than diving deep into the technology and the how, explaining the how, but focusing specifically on the value. And another thing we did is whenever Sensi started to become a standard of care in the agencies that we work with, now agencies are not presenting it as something that is an add-on to their clients, but rather this is how we do business. We're providing you with both physical care and then virtual care at the same time. And it starts from the minute they receive their first care. So it's not something that creates friction with your clients where you need to come back and offer something new to them, not to speak about additional costs, which is also something we're not encouraging, but rather as they come to their first assessment, they just present Sensi as another form of care that they provide as part of their regular business. And I think those two lessons learned were what really helped us with adoption. Another thing that we see and we learned from past experience in technology in this market is that everything that requires the intervention of the older adult, whether they need to press something, push something, wear something, speak to something, it just don't work. For many reasons. First of all, they can forget. Second of all, they don't want to bother their family members sometimes, even if they are experiencing something. So what Sensi is doing today, and we're very firm on that, even while we are integrating more and more data points into our system, is we are making sure that our system is fully autonomous and doesn't require the needs of the older adult, because this is something that also creates friction, high friction in adoption.
I think something that's really interesting to consider based off what she had is a positioning in the marketplace that you haven't seen too many on the home care side actually take, but that we have an opportunity to be preventative care. We've talked about terms like post-acute care and the acute care system and the role that home health and hospice has to play. And home care has just been saying, wait, me too, we're here as well, and being heard. COVID accelerated our opportunity to take center stage in that. But I think there's a continued evolvement of our opportunity, and that's around the fact that we are even pre-acute care. So before you enter into the healthcare world, able to be at the patient's home and monitoring the care. And tools like Sensi AI, what I see is that evolving to, and I mean the proof is really in the pudding with it, but it's that you have the opportunity to now monitor things and be able to then evaluate when additional care is going to be needed. There's a lot of other amazing predictive technologies on the home health and hospice side that will allow you to predict even when somebody's going to die now, so that you can start up the continuous care services. And I've been waiting all along for what about us on the home care side? What's going to be the tools that allow us to be able to step in and move faster and be able to accelerate the care and be in the home so that they don't have hospitalizations, not just rehospitalizations, but let's just talk about not going at all. And by leveraging tools like this, I think the theory is that you'll be able to keep them in the home longer, healthier longer, and reduce even the risks of them getting into that hospital a little bit sooner. Ask me in another few years how this is going, and I'll let you know. But I think there's a big opportunity for us if we're talking about predicting.
So let's give it up again for Romi and Kristen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.